You ever have one of those weeks where you feel like your whole life is one long setup for the world's weirdest punchline? That was me staring at my grandfather's old wooden cabin, the one I'd just spent every dime and drop of sweat restoring while my neighbor Karen decided it was suddenly the single greatest threat Maplewood Heights had ever seen. I mean, you can't make this stuff up one day. I'm the proud new owner of a 50-year-old family heirloom, and the next Karen's prowling my property at night, scrawling diagrams in a little notebook, ducking behind bushes like she's starring in her own low-budget spy movie. I caught her on my security cameras, not once, not twice, but 3 times in a week. And you just know when someone's out there drawing maps of your yard, it's not because they're planning to drop off a plate of cookies. And let me tell you, things only got stranger from there. Because Karen's big power move was to call 911 on me, claiming there were serious safety concerns over a cabin my grandfather had built with his own hands with permits in a time when people borrowed a cup of sugar, not filed a complaint about your mailbox post, not matching the neighborhood aesthetic. I still remember the moment, her standing at the edge of my porch, lips pursed, eyes darting from me to the walls, like she was waiting for the building to fall over out of spite. She didn't expect what happened next. I looked her dead in the eye, pulled out a single quietly devastating piece of paper, and said the one sentence that sent her stumbling back 3 steps like she'd seen a ghost. Yeah, that happened, and I'll get there. But let me back up a sec. The cabin hadn't just dropped out of the sky. My grandfather, Samuel Blackwood, left it to me along with a note that just said, "For Ethan who understands what's worth preserving." At the time, I thought I did. I'd been living in Portland working 60-hour weeks as a software engineer at a startup that burned cash faster than I burned coffee. When the pink slip landed on my desk, I had a severance and a lot of doubts, so moving to the old family cabin sounded like the break I needed. It sat on 3 quiet acres outside town, a relic of another era. Original Oregon pine, hand-carved window frames, a foundation solid as the day it was poured. To me, it was a shot at real work. Real pride, maybe even the woodworking business I'd dreamed about. To Karen, it was the start of a war. Now you gotta picture Karen. She's the kind of woman who shows up on moving day, clipboard in hand, blonde hair, set voice like she's reading you your rights. "You must be Samuel's grandson," she said, barely disguising the judgment. "I'm Karen Steinfeld, vice president of the Maplewood Heights HOA, and I wanted to discuss some concerns we have about your property." She gestured at the cabin like it was a crime scene, then handed me a folder thicker than a law school textbook full of violations. My mailbox post didn't match the new uniform signage standard, my paint color was non-conforming, my landscaping was too wild. Some of the stuff was so petty I wanted to laugh, but she was deadly serious. I tried to keep my cool, told her I'd be restoring the place just like my grandfather would have wanted. Nothing unsafe, nothing shady, just honest work. She said, "Neighborhoods evolve, Ethan. What worked in 1973 might not meet today's standards. The HOA has certain covenants about appearance." And I could practically hear the sound of a gavel in her voice. The kicker. Just because your cabin predates the HOA doesn't mean it's exempt. That was her bombshell. What I didn't realize then, what nobody realized, was that Karen wasn't acting alone. 3 days after her first visit, this guy named Clayton Morrison shows up. City building inspector mustache that screams, "Trust me." Eyes that say, "I've already decided you're guilty." He tells me there's been an anonymous complaint. Wonder who could have filed that, and start snooping around my cabin like he's on a mission. But here's the thing, the man is all theater snapping pictures, shaking his head, writing dramatic notes, but never once using a tool that actually measures anything. Then he drops his own bomb, claims the insulation might be asbestos, tells me I'll need to strip the whole place and hire a specialist for $60,000, hands me a report stuffed with technical jargon. But you know what they say, trust but verify. Oregon's a one-party recording state, so I started documenting everything. Morrison's visits, his odd behavior, the way he always seemed to know where Karen wanted him to look. Then I did a little digging. Turns out Morrison and Karen go way back Facebook friends messages about helping with that problem property. Meanwhile, I found receipts and paperwork from my grandfather. The insulation was replaced in 2015, certified asbestos-free. I paid for my own independent lab test. And guess what? 0 asbestos. Morrison's whole professional assessment was pure fiction. By now, Karen had ramped up her campaign, whipping the neighborhood into a frenzy. She started a Facebook group. Concerned? Maplewood residents posted photos of my cabin in just the right light to make it look like a haunted shack, and pretty soon the whole street was gossiping about safety hazards and property values. Folks who never said a word to me suddenly acted like experts. One lady from 2 streets over started telling people my porch was about to cave in. Yeah, thanks for your concern, Mrs. Patterson. Only a few folks, Mrs. Chen, Mr. Rodriguez, quietly told me to hang in there, but the mob was getting louder by the day. Still, I kept my head down and started looking for anything that could help me fight back. That's when I found my ace in the hole. I was cleaning out the basement, just trying to make room for tools, when I found a locked file cabinet key taped under my grandfather's workbench, old school style. Inside, every document you could imagine: building permits, land, surveys, a thick envelope labeled, "For Ethan, when the wolves come." There it was, a conservation easement from 1995, signed and notarized, legally protecting my land from development forever. Karen's big plan to tear down my cabin and build luxury townhomes. Not just a bad idea, it was legally impossible. But that wasn't even the best part. See, my grandfather hadn't just been a good neighbor. Turns out he was the original president of the HOA, and before he passed, he'd written a clause into the bylaws. If the president dies or is incapacitated, the role passes to a direct family member living in the neighborhood. Yep, that meant me. I checked it with a property attorney, Sarah Kim, and she confirmed it rock solid. Karen didn't just pick the wrong guy, she picked a fight with the future boss. So I did what any good grandson would. I got my paperwork in order, gathered evidence of Morrison's fraud, prepped a little presentation, and waited for the perfect moment. Karen, meanwhile, was so confident she planned a whole celebration dinner for the night of her big HOA meeting, had the press invited, the fire chief, the city council, the whole 9 yards. Meeting night comes around and you could feel the tension. 60-some neighbors packed into the community center, cameras flashing, everyone buzzing. Karen strutted to the front, ran through a PowerPoint loaded with doctored photos, described my place as a public health emergency. Morrison took the stage, doubled down on his lies, rattling off fake asbestos threats and electrical dangers, whipping the crowd into a panic. Then Karen called for a vote to force me to comply or demolish. I could see my supporters wilting under the pressure. That's when I stood up, in the back row, manila envelope in hand, and said, "There's one problem with that vote." Silence. You could hear the projector humming. I walked up, opened the envelope, pulled out my grandfather's succession clause, looked Karen dead in the eye and said, "I'm the HOA president. This meeting is hereby adjourned." Her face. Oh man, I wish you could have seen it. Went from smug to ghost white in a split second. She stepped back once, twice, 3 times, just like in my opening story, like the truth had physically knocked her off balance. What happened next was the stuff of neighborhood legend. Within days, I'd suspended Karen, called for a full audit of the HOA finances, and with Mrs. Patterson, the treasurer, now on my side, started unraveling 3 years of embezzlement, fake inspection payments, and legal bills paid out of HOA dues. Morrison, cornered by evidence and facing real jail time, flipped, gave us everything: texts, emails, even voicemails with Karen directing him to find expensive problems. Civil lawsuits rained down, the DA opened a criminal investigation, and Karen's law license suspended. The best twist, Karen's house was snapped up by the Martinez family, a military couple with 3 kids and a disabled veteran dad. The whole neighborhood came together to help them modify the house for wheelchair access, building ramps, planting a garden, setting up a tool library. Yeah, even the Facebook group turned into a support page. The place changed overnight, fear giving way to real community, just the way my grandfather wanted. And the final cherry on top, I found mineral rights paperwork in the workshop. Turns out there's a chunk of change in natural gas beneath my land. Karen's schemes could never touch it. You ever see someone drive past a place they used to rule only to find everyone thriving without them? Last I saw of Karen, she was driving away, head down, while the whole block worked together to help the new neighbors settle in. There wasn't anger in her eyes, just regret. Maybe that's the best you can hope for some folks. So yeah, sometimes the quiet ones really do hold all the cards. My grandfather prepared for every storm, legal, personal, or otherwise, and I finally get what he meant about preserving what matters. It's not just wood nails or land. It's people looking out for each other, standing up when it counts. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after. Ever face down a neighborhood bully or see power abused right in your backyard? What would you have done if you had the cards? Drop your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your take on justice community and what it really means to stand up for what's right. And hey, if this story hit home, like and subscribe for more real-life tales of everyday people holding the line against bullies, because trust me, sometimes the best revenge is just living free together.